Our title for today of my message is about daddy roles. We will be having a conversation on 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, starting from verse 10 to verse 12. Now, before we start, let me ask you this question. So how do you describe your dad? So what you see now is a general perception of a father, typically in a Filipino family household. Ang description natin dyan, normally sa isang Filipino household is, the father is the head of the family. He's the provider. He's an authoritarian figure, mahigpit, strict, upright, wise and experienced. Masungit. Masungit ba? Hindi. Or in our experience before, yung generation namin, normally ang tatay masungit. Lalo na pag may mga kaibigan kaming dumarating sa bahay, then I'll introduce my friends. Dad, my friends. Ang sasabihin lang ng daddy ko, ano lang, tatango lang. So my friends felt aloof and afraid to approach my dad. Strong. Man of few words. Hindi kasi masyado nagsasalita. Nagbabasa lang ng dyaryo sa santabi. And stern-faced. Hindi nga ngumingiti, di ba? So that's how we grew up, especially in our generation before, of how we see our dad. So going back to our main truth for today's conversation, it is this. God's guidance is our assurance to experience a flourished existence. Parents have a lot to do in the molding of the lives of their children. Our influence in the lives of our kids will be very evident as they grow up, especially the dads. Now, it can either be a positive or negative impact, depending on how you treat them. So dads, remember that. Some kids grow up and vow not to be like their dad. Some kids resent or despise their dad so much that as they grow up, they fight and argue with their dads their whole lives. Do you agree? Now, as fathers, we have a unique and powerful role in the lives of our kids. And what is that? And that is to be able to lead our children to follow Christ and enjoy the blessings of God as they grow up. So here's our Bible verse for today. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 10 to 12, it says, "You yourselves are our witnesses, and so is God, that we were devout and honest and faultless toward all of you believers. And you know, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and urged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom and glory." Okay, let me give you a background of 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. This is part of Paul's letter to the church of Thessalonia. What he was basically saying is that this is how you take care of the church members, and this is how you are going to deepen your relationship within the church. Now, it is interesting and worthy to note, to grasp the central message of the context of 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, and it is this. Paul emphasized to the church that even for the church in Thessalonia and to all of us here right now, that as he follows Christ, we should also follow Christ. And that he gets the trust and support of the church because he is a man of integrity. Now, what I want you all to focus is on the succeeding verses in verse 11 to 12 of our text. This is where Paul tells the church that we should exhibit the traits mentioned in those verses just like how a father is to his children. Okay? That's where we're going to focus. What are those traits, fatherly traits, that we should all exhibit so that our children will eventually know God, follow God, and have a life that's full of blessing, a flourished life, that what God has desired for all of us. So let's look at verses 11 to 12. For you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and urged you to walk in a manner worthy of God. So what is Paul telling to us here? Now in this verse, Paul gave us three fatherly traits that can make our children follow and seek God. And by doing so, as what I mentioned a while ago, the blessings of God will be bestowed on our children, and they will flourish because this is what God desires for us when we follow and seek God with all our heart. Now, do you know, that study and research show, there's a lot of studies and research na ginagawa, hundreds of studies. Do you know that yung fatherly traits na binanggit dito ni Paul, they top the research done by all these researchers and studies that has been done in this century alone about the current and modern perspective of fatherly involvement. So nakakagulat. Bakit? Kung inopen lang pala nila yung Bible, hindi nila kailangan mag-research at gumastos. Dahil sinabi na ni Paul 20 centuries ago na this is what a father should possess and express towards his children if they want their children to have a flourished life. But the good thing about these studies is that, in a way, they have validated the truthfulness of the Bible. They have validated the truthfulness of the Bible. That what was true and attested by Paul centuries ago are still relevant in this time, in our time. Amazing, hindi po ba? Do you agree? They have researched this and then they found out na ito yung top 3, ito yung top. Matagal na pong sinabi yan ni Paul 20 centuries ago as advice to the Thessalonian church. Now, our text for today provides the guidelines of the essential traits that we fathers, I'm talking to the dads, mga tatay na katulad ko, that we dads should possess. A father is an exhorter. This is taken from our main text. A father is an exhorter. So what does it mean? A father must continue to teach and instruct his kids. A father must be constantly engaged in the lives of his children. Sometimes sa panahon ngayon, when our kids are not home, what do we do, fathers, diba? Where are you? Text tayo, where are you? Where are you na? What time are you going home? Diba? That's how we engage in the lives of our kids because we let them know that we care. Hindi sa nangungulit tayo. Parents, dads, we're not making kulit to our kids, but it's just because we care for them. We want to know. How are you? How's your studies? Who's your crush? Diba? We're not spying on them, but we just want to get involved in the lives of our kids. We just want to know you more. So that's part of it. Instructing them about God. Teaching moments. Diba? Bonding with your fathers, sons and dads, sons and daughter. So that's what it means to be an exhorter. You engage with your kids. Be there for your kids. Now, a father gives encouragement. When our kids are down, kung minsan nakikita natin sila, may problema, o nanlulumo sila, fathers are supposed to give them encouragement. To brighten up their day and give sound advices to them. Okay? To to give sound advices to them, and also to boost their moral. Baka minsan nakikita natin yung mga anak natin, we're so busy with our occupation and our job that sometimes when they come to us, Dad, I want to ask you something. Later na, anak, may ginagawa ako. Let's not push away our kids, dads. Let's grab every moment na pag lumapit sa ating mga anak, even pag hindi lumalapit, we take the initiative to ask our kids, how are you now? Can we talk? How's your schooling? Give them the nudge. Kung nakikita natin that our kids struggle, if we see our kids struggling, especially the education system here in Singapore, it's very stressful. Huwag na nating intayin na makita natin sila na umiiyak and broken down. Let's be involved in the lives of our kids. Let's take the initiative. Are you okay? Do you need help in your studies? Do you need us to hire a tuition or maybe send you to tuition so that you can cope with your studies? Sometimes a nudge is all they need. And a word of encouragement, you can do that. You can do it. Just trust in the Lord. Do your part. Study. You can do it. Since sometimes yun lang ang kailangan ng mga anak natin eh. A word of encouragement to tell them that we are there to support them no matter what. And lastly, a father sets a good example to his children. Dads, our life must set an example. We must be the role model for our kids. We should be the role model for our kids. Why? Because our life must inspire them. Our lives as dads must inspire our kids. And when they are inspired, they will, and because we have the marks of Christ. As dads, followers of Christ, we have the marks of Christ. And when they see the marks of Christ, ano ba yung marks of Christ? The fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit should be manifested and seen in our lives so that our kids will be inspired to follow Christ kasi nakikita nila sa atin. So now, as I promised you a while ago, I'm going to tell you my father's story. My dad and my relationship with him when I was growing up. This is my dad. Pogi, no? Sabi ko sa inyo, pogi eh. He's Captain Ariel Casala, or Roger, or Rohel, to his co-pilots. He's a pilot, by the way. He's a commercial pilot in the Philippines. Meron din siyang funny nickname. They called him Captain Tabo. You know why Captain Tabo? Every time he goes to the toilet, he always has this tabo eh. You know now what he's going to do. I'm always amazed when I hear stories told by his co-pilots and friends about my dad. My dad, for your information, is the only pilot during his time that has been authorized and licensed by ATO to fly any commercial aircraft. So siya lang po yung lisensyado at that time na he can fly any type of aircraft. Also, ever since my dad was a kid, he grew up kasi in Batangas. Yung dream niya na talaga is to be a pilot. Every time there's an airplane flying in the sky, coming out from Lipa Air Base, now known as Fernando Air Base in Lipa City, Batangas, lagi siya nakatingin, lagi niyang tinitingnan yon. So, even as a small kid, he really dreamt of becoming a pilot, a commercial pilot. This was him when he was in the United States for a training. And when they were supposed to bring a DC-3 aircraft back to the Philippines. The only thing now that my dad could not fly is a helicopter. According to my dad's friends, hindi talaga kaya ng daddy mo magpalipad ng helicopter. Pero pagdating sa eroplano, lahat ng klase ng eroplano, he can fly. And the ATO, or the Air Transport Organization, the governing body in the Philippines that gives out licenses to all commercial pilots, can attest to that. Because in that license, lahat doon certified siya to fly any type of aircraft. There's also a hero story about my dad. My dad encountered an accident. So what was that? My dad landed the plane without wheels. My dad landed an airplane without wheels. How? Hindi po lumabas yung gulong when they were trying to land at the Manila Domestic Airport at that time. So it was a chartered flight. There were passengers on board. I don't know how many passengers, but they were hovering the skies for I think 30 minutes or an hour. I'm not so sure. So he was forced to land kasi wala nang gasolina. There's no more fuel. So he has to land the aircraft. And what he did was, he tried to find a grassy part of the runway, and that's where he landed the airplane. Fortunately, it didn't explode kasi only yung hélice lang yung bali. But the fuel tank was intact. Everything was intact. And all the passengers actually thanked him for landing the aircraft safely. This was him in a cockpit. He was the one on your right side. So my dad's work as a pilot keeps him away from us, his family, for so many months, sometimes 3, 4, 5 months away. When pag nadidestino siya sa ibang lugar. But he makes up for the lost time with his family. He spends most of his time with us. Hindi siya umaalis ng bahay just to spend time with us, para ma-cover lang or to catch up for lost time. My dad was malambing. He's very sweet. Although pag nakikita mo siya, piloto, parang tatahitahimik. With us, his family, me and my mom at that time, he was malambing. And he likes to be hugged tightly. He likes to be hugged tightly. Yung yayakapin siya ng mahigpit. May tunog pa. Ganon. Mahigpit talaga. And my kids can attest that I also do the same to them this day. Siguro, I got it from my dad. Then when I was in grade 4, we were living in Manila at that time. Grade 4 is primary 4 here in the Singapore education system. When I was in grade 4, we moved from Manila to Las Piñas because we bought a house in one of the subdivisions in Las Piñas. So it was middle of the school year, so there's no chance for me to transfer to a nearby school. So I have to shuttle down from our house in Manila, from our house in Las Piñas to my school in Manila. And my dad would always fetch me daily. Susunduin niya ako. Kung wala lang siyang flight, wala siyang flight schedule, he would fetch me daily. We were a happy family. We were a happy family. But things changed downhill when my mom and dad separated. I was 13. No, I was 12 when my mom and dad separated. And when I was 13, I started to drift away from my dad. I started to drift away and become less affectionate with him. Maybe because of what happened. I distanced myself from him. Also, he started to drink heavily. And he engaged in gambling. Lalo na kung wala silang lipad, nandun lang sila sa airport, in the pilot's lounge, they would gamble and drink along with his other co-pilots. Now, he makes up for it. So, paano siya bumabawi? So, because medyo distance na ako sa kanya, there's no I won't say love, but hindi na kami close at that time. Na I think he also don't know how to approach me or how to make our relationship work again as father and son. So what he did probably in a way that he think na to cope from his, I won't say mistakes, but yung bang para punan yung pagkukulang niya because wala siya lagi. Because I shuttled between my mom and dad. Kasi they got separated na, hiwalay na sila. Magkaiba na ng bahay. My dad actually gave me his whole salary. Sustento. I was the recipient of my dad's salary. And imagine the salary of a commercial pilot at that time. Monthly, I always go to his office just to get his salary. And what's left for him is his pilot's allowance. Pero yung pilot allowance, alam ko, mas malaki pa sa sweldo. So sabi niya, tingin ko okay lang. So with that, I get to buy what I want. I was a teenager. Barely high school. First year high school ako. But I get what I want. I get new shoes, new clothes, whatever the latest fashion at that time. I can get it. But we drifted apart as time passes by. We drifted apart. I can't remember a time when we talk that we don't argue. We argue a lot. Sinasagot ko yung tatay ko noon. When he's drinking, I also keep my distance from him kasi ayoko siyang makita ng ganon. But when he is sober naman, meaning okay siya, he's not drinking, he always tries to scold me. Lagi niya ako pinapagalitan for reasons that I can't remember anymore. Lagi niya akong pinapagalitan, nawala na yung lambing niya. He doesn't like to be hugged anymore. I myself don't want to hug him anymore. Once nakainom siya, when he's drunk, he always come, Ariel, come here. Di ka rito. Hug mo si daddy. Malambing siya. Lumalabas yung pagkalambing niya. Paglasing. And then he also be, I love you, anak. Oh, may hawak pang ano yun. I love you, anak. You're one of the best thing that ever happened to me. Paglasing siya. He's always telling me, oh, I'm proud of you that you're my son. And you know what? Hearing those words of affirmation from my dad makes me happy inside. But somehow, I didn't show it to my dad. Sinasabi niya, I love you, anak. Nanyayakapin niya ako. Oo lang ako. Oh, ganun lang. Sinabi niya, I love you. Yeah, I know it. Alam ko, ganun lang. Parang I didn't reciprocate yung affection na pinapakita niya. Maybe because we have no closure. We have no closure of what happened between our family. That's why I resent my dad during those times. My dad died of cancer May 2002. It was a few days before his 60th birthday when he passed away. I was already here in Singapore working. I rushed back home to the Philippines after receiving a call from my aunt, who was my dad's sister, telling me that my dad's situation is getting worse. I have to come home. From the airport, I rushed straight to the hospital. Then from the hospital, I saw him there, lying on the hospital bed. Eyes closed, breathing heavily, and mumbling words that I cannot understand. And I barely recognize him. Dahil ang laki ng pinayat niya. You can see my dad is a bit plump. Ang laki ng pinayat niya. Bagsak yung katawan niya. When I saw him, I rushed to his bedside and I hugged him. And I told him, I whispered to his ear. Sabi ko sa kanya, you can rest na, Dad. You can rest na. I am okay. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about my family. Don't even worry about my other siblings. We will take care of them. And I also whispered to his ear and asked him to pray with me. I told him, Dad, I think it's the right time for you to ask forgiveness from God and accept Him as your Lord and Savior. Then while I was praying for him, I knew he understood what I was telling him. I knew he understood, because tears were flowing from his eyes even though they were closed. And his last word to me was, he uttered my name, Ariel. Although medyo inaudible, but I heard him when he uttered my name. And a few minutes after that, he passed away. I loved my dad. I love my dad, and I'm so grateful that during that last days, I was able to tell him that I love him. Because that was the last words that I told him. I love you, Dad. Despite our differences and infightings, I believe who am I right now, and what made me today is influenced by my dad. Even some of the wise sayings that I'm telling my kids today came from him. Maybe my dad wasn't able to manifest the traits mentioned by Paul in our text today the way I expected to be. But looking back, I came to realize that maybe he did express them the best way he knows. And I got it. I understand it. And I feel it. As a father, our children must see in us our role model, who is our Father in heaven, so that they will pursue more of God. Dads, we are the role model of our children. They must see who is our role model, and that is God the Father in heaven. God's guidance is our assurance to experience a flourished existence. These are the guiding traits of a father we learned today. To exhort our children by teaching and instructing them about the God we serve. To encourage them by boosting their morale through sound advices that gives hope and inspiration. And to continue to urge them to be Christ-like. So what's our action? Dads, apply and practice those traits mentioned by Paul. Let God's light be reflected in our lives to guide our children as they grow up. And hopefully, as fathers who follow Christ, we will set a good example to our kids as they see who our role model in our life is. And that is God the Father, who is the perfect Father. Trustworthy, loving, kind, gracious, caring, patient, and at times corrects and disciplines us. And as our lives as fathers inspire our children, we are able to point them to Christ. We are able to point our children to Christ. And because we follow Christ, they will also want to follow Christ. Because kids look upon us. If they see that we are followers of Christ, then they will also want to follow Christ. Because they see the goodness of God in our lives. And because of that, they will live a flourished life. A life that has been planned and desired and intended by God for all of us to live. I hope, dads, that the traits that we studied today and that we learned today in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, we will be able to apply it in our lives. and be the role model for our kids, to inspire, to guide, to exhort them, to follow Christ more, and to seek Him with all their hearts. God bless you all, and happy Father's Day.